We light our chalice flame today, as chalice flames are lit in our brother and sister congregations across the world. And as we do so, on this fourth Advent Sunday, we will hear words from the Reverend David Breeden, minister to the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. In this time of celebration and reflection, throughout the year to come and always in our lives, may we know we are loved. May we share the love we have, and may we be the love we wish to see. Welcome. Welcome to this, the Seven Oaks Unitarian Meeting House. We're at a time of darkness and a time of light. It's not the balance of equinox that we spoke about a few weeks ago. Instead, in the Northern Hemisphere at least, we're just one day away from the Winter Solstice, the day of the shortest light and the longest dark. Now, for centuries, this day has been recognised and, in its way, celebrated. We're at a point of greatest darkness, but by its very nature, we are at the point of the return of the light, but not yet. This solstice time is held so deep in the culture of many people. It's also been a time to celebrate other festivals of light too. For the Jewish faith, this moment of deepest darkness is that time to remember the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem around 2,200 years ago. It's known as Hanukkah, and the festival concluded just last Friday. It's a time to reflect and to be inspired by the rebirth of the Jewish faith, the rebuilding of the temple, the bringing back into ritual and practice after years of oppression. A spark in the light, a spark of light in the darkness. Now, for Christians, Christmas is coming. For many others too, Christmas is coming. Not quite the same this year. And there's much debate on whether the festival was deliberately placed at this time of darkness. But whatever the reason, the sensual reality of light in the darkness brings the story of Christmas to life. Now, for all of us, as we approach the end of a difficult, turbulent, frustrating, and for many a tragic year, we too are perhaps starting to see the glimmer of hope, of new beginnings on the horizon. Like today, we are almost there, but not quite. On this fourth Sunday of Advent, at this time of expectant hope, in the darkness, but with the promise of the light to come. This time, this space are yours. I bid you a very warm welcome. The Christian festival of Advent provides us a series of 4 weeks toward Christmas. 4 weeks to reflect, to consider, to prepare. We have lit in previous weeks candles of joy, of hope, of love. And this fourth Sunday in Advent, we light a candle for peace. Our first song is a song of gathering. Our means of gathering may not be the same as we are used to, or how we might want it to be, but these words by Alicia S. Carpenter seem to recognize that too. reminding us of the need to listen, the need for kindness, the importance of friendship. Here we have gathered. The words will be on your screens. Our first reading today is a poem by Emily Dickinson, written in the mid-19th century. This is a piece called A Certain Slant of Light. And it's a poem that recalls and reflects that sometimes when hope appears to be there, when all around see that hope coming, it doesn't always have the effect you think it might. Our emotions can be different. Our emotions change. A poem about winter light, a certain slant of light. There's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons, that oppresses like the heft of cathedral tunes. Heavenly hurt it gives us. We find no scar, but internal difference. Where the meanings are, none may teach it. Any, 'tis the seal despair, an imperial affliction sent to us of air. And when it comes, the landscape listens. Shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on the look of death. Words of Emily Dickinson. Let us come together in a time of prayer. Spirit of all lives, you hold in your heart and hands all that is good and just, as you wait for us to grab and take hold. May we know when to reach and when to release, when to pray, or when simply to stand still to listen for that small voice inside. May we trust that what we hear is not just our imaginations, and help us to accept this. Spirit of life, guide us this day as we open the path before us, with you as our beacon, our light, the star whose glow we follow. Eternal Spirit, Mother, Father, ever present if only we have eyes to see. We stand in awe in the presence of the universe. In its proper time, may the mystery unfurl before us. Though fettered by our material desires, may the depths of the Spirit uphold and guide us. May the great gifts of the earth sustain us. May the universe forgive our faults and our follies, and may we in equal measure be forgiving. May we ever turn our eyes toward the light to dispel the darkness which would engulf us. We give thanks for the bounty of the universe, which abounds with power and glory beyond our greatest imaginings. If you wish to, I welcome you to join with me in the last prayer, following the words on the screen. Eternal Spirit, may we be led from death to life, from falsehood to truth. May we be led from despair to hope, from fear to trust. May we be led from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, our world, our universe. Amen. Our second reading is a reflection on solstice by the Unitarian Universalist minister, Stephen Shick. Solstice celebrations capture the moment when the darkness gives way to the light. For thousands of years, people have tried to hold on to that moment of joy and certainty. 5,000 years ago at Newgrange in Ireland, people built a circular structure that let a shaft of light deep into a central chamber at the dawning of the winter solstice. There, the light pierced the darkness and illuminated intricate symbols, including eye-shaped carvings. We can only imagine how the anxiety caused by the approaching darkness was relieved when the light was seen making its journey down the shaft. Then, observers could predict their future with confidence. In time, after the winter, the growing and harvest seasons would follow. Constructing shafts for the light to penetrate deeply into the central chamber of our hearts is an effort that must take place in a time of waiting and uncertainty, in a time before the eye begins to see. It's a time when adjustments need to be made. Christians call it Advent, a time to prepare for the arrival of the sun, the light of the world. So much of what we do in life depends on how we respond to this waiting moment. Such a time can be met with confidence and anticipation, or anxiety and despair. Confidence that the light will be seen again, or anxiety that it may never return. We are in such a moment today. What can we do in this waiting moment? Practice imagining the dawning shaft of light as it makes its way into your own heart. To direct this light requires us to, as Dag Hammarskjöld suggests, vanish as an end and remain purely as a means. No small task. But if you doubt its effectiveness, think of those who have made a difference in your life and what they have selflessly given you. Or think of the man whose life we celebrate at Christmas, Jesus. It is clear, vanished as an end and lived only as a means. Waiting is not the same as being passive. Living in this dark time requires active waiting. The only question is, will we, in this waiting time, build a chamber where the light can be reflected widely enough so that others can see its beauty? The words of Stephen Shick. With those words of Stephen Shick still with us, let us join together in a second hymn. At this time of winter solstice, of impending change, of patient reflection, of hope within reach. Our second hymn, from a Transylvanian Unitarian text, is a reflective piece for this time. Find a stillness. The words will be on your screen. We are on the edge. We're on the edge of the winter solstice. We're on the edge of Christmas. We're on the edge of New Year. We're on the edge of hope for a better 2021. But we are very much on the edge. This can be a difficult time of year. Even in less perilous times, this has been a difficult time of year. After months of activity, of the glories of the spring, summer, golden autumn sunshine, when we get it, the descent from October toward the end of the year, in the northern hemisphere at least, can be soul-destroying. Darkness begins to shroud us, and our opportunities to see even outside of our windows diminishes. We can become more introverted, more reflective. We sense the darkness, and we respond in our own ways. Our first reading today, Emily Dickinson's poem, A Certain Slant of Light, for me, captures this time well. Always a writer of beautiful, if ambiguous, poetry, the piece does, for me, bring a clarity to some of the feelings and emotions arising right now. Emily talks of the slant of light, of a certain slant of light, a heavy winter light that falls through the window yet weighs us down. At this time when we're searching for the light, we seek the hope that fresh and emerging light will bring. Yet, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, sometimes we just cannot grasp the true hope that we want to be there. Now it is, the poem goes on to say, a heavenly hurt, a kind of pain that leaves no mark, but a definite hurt. And on, where the meanings are, none may teach it any. 'Tis the seal despair, an imperial affliction sent us of the air. And what's being said here is that we can't describe to anyone the true nature of the feeling we have. And that's frustrating as well. Not even to ourselves can we describe this. When we look deeper, we can see this alien sense of oppression. From where it comes, we do not know. And Emily finishes with those wonderful words, when it comes, the landscape listens. Shadows hold their breath. At this time of solstice, of Yule, on the edge of something, but not there yet, there is a silence in the landscape that forces us to look within. The answers are not outside. The answers are inside. Yet they're often undefined and as complicated as that oppressive light, that certain slant of light that falls through the window. Now, in our second reading, the piece by Shick, we're reminded of the celebrations and commemorations of this time of the year over centuries. Referring specifically to the construction of the vault at Newgrange in Ireland, thousands of years old, the chamber is lit by the sun on the winter solstice, the light finding its way into the darkness of the chamber. As Stephen says, we can imagine how the anxiety caused by the approaching darkness was relieved when the light was seen making its journey down the shaft. Then observers could predict their future with confidence. In time, after the winter, the growing and harvest seasons would follow. And Stephen goes on to consider the parallels we might draw from the experience of those people long ago, with lives we cannot really imagine. to our own lives. Constructing shafts for the light to penetrate deeply into the central chamber of our hearts is an effort that must take place in a time of waiting and uncertainty, in a time before the eye begins to see. It's a time when adjustments need to be made. So much of what we do in life depends on how we respond to this waiting moment. Such a time can be met with confidence and anticipation, or anxiety and despair. Confidence that the light will be seen again, or anxiety that it may never return. For me, this anxiety can be the same oppressive and uncertain light that Emily Dickinson talks of in her poem. We're approaching the end of 2020. This year has, for perhaps all of us, been the longest period of uncertainty, frustration, sadness. For over 9 months we have tried to adapt, to maintain perspective, to be kind. For each of us, as with Emily Dickinson's light, we cannot really explain or quite often understand the feelings we hold within. For each of us, it is personal. For each of us has had a difficult journey on this road. For the ancients at Newgrange, the coming of the light at solstice, at this time of year, each year, was a reminder of the coming return to a better world. It was the spark that was needed. The solstice does not lead to an immediate change in our physical world. Nature is far more gradual, more deliberate, and in fact more predictable than that. Yet the promise of the light to come starts to bring light to the shadowed corners of our hearts too. Those gatherings at Newgrange will have known the slant of light they saw that day was not one of heavenly hurt. This new slant of light of the winter solstice was a promise of a better future. It was a recognition that no matter how dark things might get, there is always the promise of hope returning. Hanukkah, solstice, Yule, Christmas. These are all festivals that remind us of the possibilities of hope, drawing on the experience of thousands of generations. These deeply spiritual and religious times of both communal and personal renewal provide a reassurance of a returning light. The promise of a vaccine, I know many who've already had part 1, is a slant of light in the uncertainty of today. The promise of a return to a more communal way of living is there. The light of solstice gives us the opportunity to remember, to reflect, to prepare. Stephen Shick reminds us that so much of what we do in life depends on how we respond to this moment. This truly is a time of reflection. It's a time to look deep within the chamber of ourselves and to determine our response to this time and to the coming times. It's not always easy, but it's a time that I, and I'm sure you, know will give a better understanding of our own response to this moment. We are on the edge. We're on the edge of something new. We're on the edge of a return to something different. The promise of light can bring warmth to the heart. We reflect on the possibilities ahead and our part in bringing them to all. To answer Stephen Shick's final question, I hope we will, in this waiting time, build a chamber where the coming light can be reflected widely enough so that others can see its beauty too. In light, we find hope. Let us come together now in a time of stillness and reflection. As we settle our bodies, perhaps closing our eyes, I shall speak some words, and I shall strike the singing bowl. We shall come together in stillness and silence together. I shall break that silence with music to continue our reflection. As we settle our bodies, focusing on our breath. Our reflection is a longer reflection than usual. It's a piece by the Reverend Kathleen McTeague called Winter Blessing. At this time of approaching light, this chance to reflect and to restore. The world catches our hearts through its light. Splintering dance of sun on water, calm moonlight poured through branches, candles lit on winter evenings, a spatter of stars on a clear night, and the bright eyes of those we love. But the brilliance never ends, even when the light goes out. Mystery shimmers and shines in the world, in even the darkest corners. It's there where the roots push life into soil and rock, in small lives lived under every stone, there in the silent pulse beneath the tree bark. It's in the depth of slow tides as they turn, there in the sky on moonless nights, when muffling clouds block out the stars. It's there in the prison, the hospital, by the hospice bed, in the empty house. Something beating in the dark shelter of our hearts, the small shine of hope, the gilt edge of kindness. May we be granted the gift of deeper sight, that we might see, with or without the light. Some closing words. Let us go in the spirit of love, never knowing when or where we may find the divine, yet conscious of the spark within each of us and the unfolding beauty that surrounds us. Let us go in peace. Let us go in love. May our lives be a blessing.